Welcome to Beyond the Cave, where we pair up our artists, authors, and fans to discuss deeper themes behind our series.
Hey guys, we are so excited to introduce to you today Jack Ballard. Jack is a musical composer, and he voluntarily reached out to us and had come up with some musical compositions to go alongside our graphic novel, The Light Princess. And he just did an amazing job, and it really enhances the reading experience to listen to the music along with it. And so get out your own versions of The Light Princess and be sure to follow along. And here we go. Enjoy.
Well, first off, Jack, this is great. This is this is a very rare thing where you'd have a cross-medium platform, a cross-platform, cross-medium experiment with putting music to a comic book. That's really awesome. And I just, right out the gate, man, I just want to say it takes someone thinking outside of where everyone else is going to even do this. So I just wanted to, first off, just almost congratulate you for that. That was pretty good.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and I appreciate that more than you know. One of the things that drives some of my colleagues nuts is the fact that as they said, I don't think that there's even a box.
That's great.
Outside.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, where else are you going to get any kind of anything new if you don't actually go out and actually explore the new? This is
right.
Yeah, that's amazing. Ironically, the people that usually are the most against people leaving the box are usually the same people that venerate the people that are outside of the box.
Right. I understand that. Well, I think what's funny about this, as much as anything, is even though graphic novel is a very recent medium, I'm actually kind of reconstituting something that's been around for a couple hundred years.
Yeah, go into detail. Talk about it.
Well, there's a thing in the 19th century and since that was called incidental music. And basically, that's music that was written to accompany a play or a story, or sometimes even a vague idea or concept. It wasn't necessarily linear. It wasn't even sometimes symbolic, but especially over the last 200 years and even beyond, there have been composers that have been inspired by a certain concept or story and then just written something that was meant to suggest it. Probably two of the best examples that come to mind are the Romeo and Juliet Overture by Tchaikovsky and 12 Overture. Even though themes represent something or maybe implied by something, it's more of a feeling or more of a concept that's supposed to go actually with a story. Sometimes it was commissioned by the producers of a ballet or a play to accompany it, like an overture or walking music or interact or something like that. But often it's also just, hey, this is a great idea. I'm going to write something on it. And that's kind of where I came from with this.
Wow. I've never actually slowed down and thought about incidental music before. Like something to accompany action, something to accompany a plot instead of something being derived from the music itself to be inferred. That's really amazing.
Right. So the nice thing is especially in this case where it was strictly inspiration. I wasn't commissioned to do this. This was not, from what everybody says, even remotely connected to Cave Publishing. But it was something I saw on one of their marketing things where I had a chance to see some of the artwork they were doing, and I was introduced to the company and went, wow, this is really cool the way they've done this particular story. And I'm a George MacDonald fan. So, wow, that's a great take on this. And so it kind of went from there.
It's so beautiful. I love the book. Yeah.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, this is actually my my introduction into Cave Publishing. That's how I became a fan.
Same here, actually.
Yeah. In fact, the second I saw George MacDonald in my bookstore, I was like, okay, what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So I picked it up. And do they have more of these? Because it was issue number 2.
Yes.
There they have a 1 and 3. I'm like, you need to order me 1 and 3.
Right. Right.
It was great. I didn't dare open up 2 without reading the beginning. I didn't want to know where that came in. I wanted to start from the beginning. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful book. It's very fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Fantastis as well.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
Again, I've read the story, and I like the little teasers that Cave Publishing has put out on their website for this, and I'm looking really forward to seeing what their take is on it. It's a one story, and it's very thing. There are 2 things that George MacDonald did that were so unique to him. One is, well, several things, but he was allegorical. And because he was allegorical, he tended to write great, far beyond a lot of where his contemporaries were, or even many people since. Some people have called him even the British Edgar Allan Poe, except as a Christian, he wrote kind of with that otherworldly thing that had a point rather than just the macabre.
Yeah.
And so the second thing that I really appreciate in this particular story is his punning. So when he's no gravity, of course she floats up, but then she can't cry and she doesn't have a serious moment because she has no gravity.
Yeah.
All of those things are, very funny if you go through. The witch, make him know it, is how, because she's going to make him know it. What her issue is. So all of that funny stuff comes in too, and there was the rub, actually.
This is so funny to me because even though I've read a lot of George MacDonald, and because this isn't the only book that he puns, like he loves that. And what's funny is I totally went French with it. I was like, oh, her name is Make Him Know It. And in reality, it's like Make Him Know It. That's so funny to me. You're right. I didn't even spot it. That's so hilarious. Wow. Wow, Make Him Know It. That's so funny. Wow.
Well, my wife does not fully appreciate my punning. She's a little tired of it after 23 years. But I have a tendency to hear plays in words. And I've always said that aside from the self-expression that I think is an avenue of grace for the artist, there's this tiny little thing, if you know a lot about a medium, where people point to something and say, oh, I see what you did. And I think artists live for that moment when somebody can say, it's like programmers with Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
A programmer sticks an Easter egg, and they appreciate the fact that another programmer finds it and opens it. And it's the same thing with artists. They say, oh, that's great. I see what you did. Yeah. And only a few people might get that. But that's what makes this whole thing fun in a completely different way.
Obviously, Tom Bombadil is J.R.R. Tolkien. If you read Middle Earth, and then the one that he loves, he calls her the same things that Tolkien would call his wife, and he just put himself in the story. I just think it's so. And of course he's immune to everything. It's and everything.
Sure.
Who is it? And J.R.R. Tolkien and his British, downplay was like, well, sometimes myth just needs mystery. Even though he would wax at length about anything else they asked.
Sure. I never thought of it that way.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Well, I know we did actually, because man, I would just enjoy talking to you. I think we could talk at length about all this stuff. I really want to showcase some of the things that we're here to talk really about as primary.
Sure.
Is this music you wrote to this comic? So I know that was maybe somewhat of a segue there, but at the same time, I want to get to this because I know that you and I could do this literally for hours. It seems like the more I talk to you. I wanted to explore some of this music that you have.
Okay. I think the easiest way to do this is I'll go to some of these pages, because that's where I started. That's where I was inspired. Just to give an overall concept on this, I started having already read the book, The Light Princess. And there's a certain amount of profundity layered into his children's stories. I
Absolutely.
mean, he had that light end. There's another writer that many people are more familiar with that actually got his start through MacDonald, and that was Lewis Carroll. There are whole sections of punning in that. George MacDonald actually wrote the letter to the publisher saying, "You need to print this Alice in Wonderland."
Wow.
And that's how that all got started. So this whole children's thing, I always kind of threw off as kind of being light, funny, but yet the more I read it, the more I started finding profound spiritual and social elements in it. And I felt the same way with the Light Princess.
Uh-huh.
And then I read this and I saw this imagery, and it's not the goofy children just for the fun, before you go to bedtime story.
Uh-huh.
There's some serious issues here. There's some things that, as MacDonald himself said, sigh when you close the book. You're thinking through everything because there's so much there. So I'm going to share my screen here. And I'll do a window so that you can actually see the direction that I'm going to go with this.
Great.
Super. Okay. So the thing is, you start with the image. And if you've ever been a father, you cannot have a real emotional tie to this thing. Even just talking to kids up here, they're trying to bring her down. They find that she's been cursed with weightlessness from this whole time. And so I couldn't get past the laughter. I mean, the artist did an amazing kind of perspective on this whole idea of she doesn't care. She's, careless in a lot of ways. And so, once you get past any concept here, this idea of everybody's concerned, so there's a certain amount of literally gravity, but she doesn't know any of it, and she could care less. So even in this whole idea of just complete unmitigated joy. So I wanted that kind of concept throughout this whole idea. So here's the first one.
That cover right there, that's my very first introduction to K publishing into this book, is that cover right there.
Exactly. Exactly.
That on me. I'm like, okay, whatever this is, that's amazing. And I picked it up, and then I saw George MacDonald, and I was hooked.
Exactly. So here's the piece itself. gives you an idea. I mean, you can see the whole concept kind of, again, she doesn't care. She's above everything. And even
Yeah.
if you put all sorts of ridiculous symbolism in, you can say the flute's above the rest of it. But I wanted a dance feel because I wanted that kind of perspective on, you know, her just, for one thing, just doing all sorts of other things and interesting things that, you know, give her the freedom that somehow has some sort of music to it that is not encumbered by anything, but at the same time, there's this concern of her parents and all these kinds of things that kind of give it just a little bit of quirkiness. So that was the idea on that one.
I loved it. It's have you seen Mozart or Amadeus? Have you seen the movie Amadeus?
Yes.
You know, he when he's writing, like there was this one moment, and he's explaining it to the king, and he's explaining how the opera's working, and how this one person's going to come in, and then another person's going to come in, and it's a tryst, and this whole thing, and how he's explaining it, how he put that into music. I felt like there was a very similar place of lightness there, you know, and so you know, lightness and humor, like lightness and mirth, they really go together. And
exactly.
I could see I mean, I guess himself, like there's a very there's a, I wouldn't call it a march because it wasn't a march, but there's this place that would almost be very danceable in a very old way, and it reminded me of even when the king, when you brought it down to the next phase, and he's like, "How dare you listen into our conversation? You know, this is a private conversation. Not how dare you float around. It's been 18 years." He's like, "How dare you listen into this very proper moment?" You know, and you I think you captured both of them very well at the exact same moment.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was
Thank you.
Good. Yeah.
Well, and that's what's so fun about this, because I'm able to, you know, and I'm able to take the inspiration, but the inspiration isn't just George MacDonald. Again, the artist did such a good job at kind of capturing that dual meaning of gravity, you know, that lightness along with the concern, and the imagery was really good. So it's not just an inspiration that happens just from reading the book, where I have my own images in my head, but where the artist actually generates something. So the next one, if I can go on, is the swimming one that you mentioned earlier. And this one, there's this image that you get. I'll go ahead and share the screen again, and I'll see if I can time it, you know, as we go through it, because that was kind of something you said was kind of fun. And this is the whole concept, where the only thing in the story that she finds is really not that frustrating lightness, flipping all over the place. And, you know, she's even finding it a little annoying if she can think of actually being annoyed by it.
Yeah.
And so suddenly she finds in a couple of earlier scenes that she is normal when she's in water. She actually likes to swim. She loves the swimming. And so she takes that and she continues to just swim as much as she can, because she can actually feel normal. And the twist that McDonald's, I think, does on this is that whole idea as if we had wings. We've always desired to be able to float ourselves, you know, and be able to fly. And yet she's kind of got the same feeling with the water. So this one's called Swimming Together. I did this kind of a ballad, Marvin Hamlish's ballad that he wrote to the movie The Sting a long time ago, has a similar feel. It's that ragtime feel, that Cuban dance ballad kind of feel. And I wanted this to be interactive. This is where they love each other. This is where they really are actually connecting, even though they don't really know it. Suddenly something's come into this girl's life that's other.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to give the readers a little bit here, we have her finally finding grounding. She finally finds a place where she actually can have at least some gravity in the water, and we have a man who has left his family to search for the love of his life, and he's wandered far and wide and has wandered into this kingdom, and now he thinks that she's drowning, and so he wants to save her. Which I think the last thing this girl could do is drown, but she's not about anything. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so here's swimming.
I love that moment.
I see what
I
you mean.
absolutely love that moment. And I think you captured it perfectly. Absolutely perfect.
Thank you. I wanted that lilting kind of thing. I wanted a ballad, but I wanted it just the opposite of no gravity. I wanted it to have a lightness. Like she's found a way suddenly to be joyful without being goofy, might be a good way to say it. She's discovered something else. And so I think that's really important.
I love when he picks her up, and for the first time, like she's already sensed, she already found some way to have gravity by herself.
Right.
Only by herself. And just as the McDonald really understood people, and he really understood the journey of people, each step, each season, each chapter of the heart.
Right.
And even a young girl, she eventually, I've said this before, in another sphere of influence I have, but the idea that basically you have like a young teenage, like a preteen girl, most across every culture I've ever been in, any economic strata, eventually she will feel misunderstood and alone. And I think it's because she's actually getting her own identity, and it's unnerving, and it's shaking her. And so there's that push and pull. She doesn't want it to happen. And in one sense, I think the lake represents that, because George MacDonald was not oblivious to all this, and now here comes of her and actually commune with her in marriage, and shows her the first time ever in someone else's arms having gravity. He picks her up and jumps into the very thing that she was already grounded in. George MacDonald's just a genius, and I don't know if George MacDonald, if he would say that's exactly what I was thinking, but at the same time, there's a lot of depth to that man. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, one of my favorite books is his book Lilith, and first time I read that, I got through the first couple chapters and went, whoa, there's too much here. I have to read it just like a story. And I got to the end, and then I went right back to the beginning and read it again, because I started seeing all of these principles and all of these things and all of these symbols. And it's pretty deep stuff. It really is, especially if you know any of the background. I'm going to share the screen again because I want to show you that exact moment that you point out. And that is right here. And you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things the artist did such an amazing job with is this one spot that the writer and the artist kind of come together and say, this is the moment. The classic love story where you see where your eyes meet across the dance floor, as it were, the West Side Story high school moment, dance. And this is the moment here which pretty much inspired a great deal of this particular movement, because of that sudden realization she has when she looks into his eyes, and vice versa.
Absolutely. And what a striking image. Even the colors chosen, what not to put in there, what to put in. The artist could have easily put in landscape behind, but nothing exists but each other.
Exactly.
It's so beautiful.
I'm going to go to the next one.
Okay.
If you're good with that.
Oh yeah.
This is Make 'Em Know It, The Witch is what it's called. And there are two reasons why I kind of did this section. Okay, so if you look at the bottom here, you got the cat, who is, of course, the witch. Now, one of the things I really did want to do is portray her, not just her creepiness, but, somehow, how can, this girl be the sister of the king, who's noble and misguided sometimes, but at least has a great heart.
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, she's very passionate here. Okay. I mean, it's like she just loses it because she can't stand happiness to her brother or anybody connected. So this is Make 'Em Know It, The Witch. And at that point, of course, that's when they find that the lake is dying.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the right out the bat, if I may, it sounds like who she is in the book as well.
Yes. And what's funny for me is when I read the book, my thought was, oh, she's kind of this goofy.
Yeah.
I can't think. I mean, just some of the fairy tale evil, which is not really evil, just, oh yeah, they're the bad guy because there has to be a bad guy, but they're stupid and they're incompetent.
No,
and
she's eccentric.
Yeah, in this case,
yeah,
the artist portray her as a great deal more malicious.
Yeah.
Than I had originally get, because I'm thinking children's story, and yet in this case, it's definitely more malicious.
Yeah, in the book, it was much more about what George MacDonald would understand to be real evil, which is someone who could just be poisoned with vanity. But the rest would still be justification that they're good to themselves.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Vanity is what's creating all this evil, but they only look at all the other parts of their life and it's okay. Instead of just everything around them being dark and evil all the time, it would be really hard to justify.
Right. I'm going to play trading. I call this trading the prince for water. I had a hard time, and I probably won't settle. Excuse me, on that particular title.
Can I make one more comment
sure.
about Make 'Em Know It? Even though that's your name was Make 'Em Noir, it's so funny to me. I just want to say, I think you really captured her personal experience, like what her internals would probably feel like, even to her in these moments. And I just, you really drew us into her actual experience. I just think that's really beautiful. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Well, in this case, this is the moment where, again, the prince has volunteered to give his life for the sake of the lake. And the only way to do it is for him to offer himself as the plug, as it were, through which the lake is draining. And it's the only way to break the curse. And he has come to this conclusion because he reasons that, well, if I'm alive and she's dead, life is not worth living. Because the artist in this case kind of, I think, made more intense MacDonald's assertion that the lake and the princess are one. And this comes from old Arthurian legend, where the king and the land are one, and only the Holy Grail can revitalize the king and can revitalize the land. And he takes that same kind of concept in this case, where the lake and the princess are the same. And so it's not just a matter of her pining away for the lake, but he also brings out the whole idea of water as life. He talks about the babies not being able to cry. He talks about there being no rain. Every spring, is dry, as the writer says. So I made this section sad, but then you'll hear some really kind of twisted things here and there that just kind of should bother you, because she's starting to realize that, okay, it's sad, bummer, but I get my lake. And yet it develops into, yes, it's a bummer. Wait a sec, I really love this guy and he's going to die, and what am I going to do? So
I don't, I'm not into flattery, but I do want to say great job, man. Really great job. It fit absolutely perfectly.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let,
Wow.
you know, as I said, the artist did such a stupendous job portraying these things, and the storyboard layout, for lack of a better term, I like the way they integrated some of the pictures into each other, and where it doesn't necessarily become sequential, but it actually kind of has an overall concept as you're going through the sequence. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's a very innovative way of doing that. One of the other things that struck me is the type of handwritten font they use. They really did change the expression and the way it was delivered. So you could hear somebody saying it one way or another without using the usual campy comic strip kind of stuff. I mean, it goes beyond that, which originally was kind of odd to me. And then the more I read it, the more I thought, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. No, this is really cool. So I'm going to play one more, the last one. I'm going to skip a couple because they're all part of this same last thing called The Light Princess. And it's about the lake is saved, girl with the violet eyes, and the last one, Redemption in Love. So I'm going to play Redemption in Love at this point, and I think it'll kind of wrap up things, and it integrates with the other ones as well. So it'll give you kind of a concept.
This is great, Jack. This is absolutely great.
It's fun. I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've noticed um, about my own writing is a lot of people end with a big bang and the audience applause, ping.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yet, and yet so many of my pieces I find are, again, back to what George MacDonald actually said at the end of one of his books. He said, close enough. He said something to the effect of, "I have written more than enough for people who just think with their foreheads, or for those who sigh as they close the book." So are you really thinking about what you wrote? Are you understanding all of the concepts that he had, all the symbols, all of the things? Is it, as Kierkegaard said, is it bringing something in your innermost being to be aware of something that is way beyond yourself? And not to get too ridiculously philosophical on that, but most of my pieces tend to be, oh, what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
Like in Make 'Em Know It. Or with these other things, ends up being something to the effect of, well, God has kind of settled things out.
Mhm.
The story has a happy ending.
Yes.
And therefore, it doesn't need a big bang. It kind of settles into, okay,
Yeah.
everything is good now. So maybe that's just the way I write.
It's so good. Even that big boom, when Make 'Em Know It dies, her abode is destroyed by the very thing that she,
Right.
that moment where there isn't a, and some almost deserving crescendo,
Right.
toms and horns, I think the beauty of this is that her actually being destroyed in this process is part of the piece gaining.
Yeah.
Instead of having to have her own moments that like they would do in modern cinema, and they'd have to make this little, they'd have to remove themselves from the gaining piece just so she could have her moment, and instead she doesn't get a moment. This is part of the piece that's just assuaging, this piece that's just flooding, and then it's almost incidental that she is also destroyed in it. I love it that there's only one frame in this adaptation, and that what you chose musically to portray everything that's happening, there isn't even an incident that would say yes, and now Make 'Em Know It has this huge end. It's like it's almost an afterthought. Which
one of the things I think that is really interesting about this, now that you mention it, is this idea of there's no vindictiveness.
Yes.
There's no vindication or justice put out by the king, for example. It's not like he's getting his sword and going and executing her. Yes. But this is strictly a result of her own evil, just a natural consequence of fixing the curse.
Yeah.
The curse is fixed, and therefore it is her end.
Yeah. And
it's a different. Go ahead.
I would go that exact road and say, even if he had to go with his sword and end, I think the modern cinematic or literary narrative would be, well, we all have some evil in us.
Right.
The Bible says don't kill. No, it says don't murder. And it's there's this place where there is no vindictive or hatred, as much as it's actually you stay in a place of peace and a place of what modernity would be illegalized at this point, whereas actually like I can take care of this evil without hating it. I can actually take care of it without ever having to go to an evil place in my heart. If the only option the evil is handing me is end me or I end innocence, there's no choice. The choice is already made.
Right. Well, there's also what C.S. Lewis mentioned, and that is evil ultimately is so insignificant that it cannot affect good.
Yeah.
it does not have the capability of it, because it will be swallowed up in good.
Yes.
So
Swallow the glory, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. So good. Man, Jack, this has been an incredible conversation.
this has been fun, very fun.
Awesome. Well, Jack, Brian, thank you so much. That was just an incredible podcast, and something that I know that Jack, I'll be continuing to listen to your compositions on my own. And for all of our listeners out there, be sure to check out our social media or our website to get the link so you can continue to listen to all of Jack's compositions that go along with The Light Princess. We know that they will just be a huge blessing to you. And so enjoy, and thanks again, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. For more, follow us on Instagram @CavePublishing. And if you're interested in coming on our show and talking about one of our series, please DM us on social media or send an email to info@cavepicturespublishing.com.